Women are playing a huge role in the poultry industry, and slowly in this room their number is going to increase, and we are going to achieve the goal what we like to achieve in India. So changing the gear for the avian influenza viruses, which is causing problem throughout the world, and what we can do to control it with vaccination, because we have to change our strategy, because our older strategies are not working the way we thought they will work. And I will giving little bit more example from the US, because same thing is also prevalent in India. So because the time constraint is there, so that's why I'm showing little bit more data from the US, because the same data for any country is going to be very similar. So when we look at just H5N1, highly pathogenic influenza virus, when it started first time in Hong Kong in 1996, we thought it's going to disappear. At that time it happens in the poultry, then some human infection occurred, then it spread to China, and then later on, if we consider after that, then it spread to many countries in the Asia, and then slowly also to Europe, and then in last few years it went to Northern America and then Southern America, and it's there almost everywhere currently. And there is no easy way to control it. So currently, if you see that the current infection in the US started in 2022, since then they are using whatever strategy are known to us for controlling avian influenza, especially highly pathogenic avian influenza, and none of those strategies has worked the way they have worked in the past. So all US state has infection in the poultry, including Hawaii, and also one of their territories, Puerto Rico. Even Alaska has the infection. And if we consider overall, more than 180 million birds has been euthanized, and last month the number of cases were more than 5 million. So it means the stamping out strategy is ineffective. And there are multiple reasons for those uninfectiveness. When we look at the infection in the wild birds, every state are finding that wild birds are infected by H5N1, and from there they are coming to the backyard poultry, then industrialized poultry, and that's going to keep on happening. So how many number of cases we can detect from the wild birds? That will give us a glimpse that virus is there. And then if we look at other mammals, wild mammals, the list is long. More than 35 different mammals had been found to get infected in the US, and the situation will be very similar in the other part of the world. There is no difference. So what that means to us, that this virus is expanding its host range, and then we are worried about how it is going to mutate. It is already mutating in wild birds, in wild mammals. Can we stop it? We don't have those means. What we have to do is how we protect our poultry industry, how we protect human, and how we protect where this virus can end up. Can it end up as a pandemic virus? It may. The other thing people has done, more work was done for the COVID, when they are looking at the waters and finding out virus is there. So when the peak of SARS-CoV-2 was in human, then after a few weeks, you will see the peak in deers population. They are getting infection from human through waterways. The same thing is also happening for H5N1. This is happening in the US, will be happening in the rest of the world too. It is just an example. So there are few places where they have detected the virus which is of enough amount. When we look for other type of spillover, which has happened in the US, the virus has gone to cattle. Consider, I've been working on influenza virus for more than 25 years. I never thought the cow will have influenza. So there are multiple resortment event has occurred, so I'm not going to go into that details that how those reassortment are occurring, because it's a segmented genome virus. So with that one, the multiple events when it's occurring, then we are getting a new type of virus, and in influenza virus, we have clade, subclade. So the currently virus which is being circulating in the US and many parts of the world, and if you consider how many different type of influenza virus can be within H5N1 virus, and the clade means it is 2.3.4.4b. Consider how many variation can be there, and that virus is there in the cattle. From cattle it can come to poultry, it can come to human, it can go to wild mammals, and the truck going back forth in the industry, they are also culprit. The human can also be culprit. So situation is not that good. So in US alone, there has been more than 1,000 cases which has occurred in different farms. And if you look at number of the states, there are 18 different states has reported. If you look at the milk supply in the US, majority of the milk supply is contaminated by avian influenza virus, which is circulating in human. The good thing is that pasteurization is working, so there's no live virus is ever detected in the virus, in the milk. But there are people who are feeding the unpasteurized cow milk to dog and cat can get H5N1 infection and can die, and they can pass on that virus to human. So this situation is very, very grim. If it happens in a country like India, consider where milk supply can get jeopardized, it will be a huge, huge effect. So we can learn from the lessons what is happening in the US, where the majority of the virus is there in the milk, and the milk production goes down, the quality of the milk is very bad, it is changes in the color, and the amount of the milk production is very, very down. In addition to that, in human infection in US alone, there are more than 70 cases has occurred, and with one death. So this virus is also causing infection in human. In other part of the world, if you consider, there has been more than 1,000 cases, and mortality rate in the other part of the world has been about 30%. So influenza virus, consider that lethal is not known before. So this virus is not a pandemic virus from human to human. This virus cannot spread effectively from human to human. Main reason being the virus is replicating deep in the lung, not in the upper respiratory tract. If the virus changes in some of the hemagglutinin, some amino acid, if it starts replicating in the upper respiratory tract, this virus will become a pandemic virus, and then can be very, very lethal. So basic thing what we do for control of influenza or control of other infectious diseases in the poultry is mainly the biosecurity. And in many poultry farms, I have seen the biosecurity is pretty good. And I started my veterinary career from poultry industry, so I understand that part too. Then hygiene and disinfection, because all the people who are coming, truck and all those things measure we have to take. And then if the new birds are coming, how we are going to keep them separate from the older birds before we know that they are not carrying any infection. Then the monitoring is very important, and surveillance of the disease on a regular basis so that we can find it out, those infection earlier, and then we can take precaution. And then if infections occur with H5N1 or other highly pathogen avian influenza virus or other virus infections, then we can do the depopulation and disinfection of the premises. And then the government and the industry can set up the quarantine zone so that those infection can be curtailed. So whenever those things are happening in any part of the state, I am reading there too that how state government is implementing the quarantine zone and how they eliminate the source of infection in those particular farms. Vaccination so far in many countries has been used as a sporty measure, but I will advocate that the industry, the government, and the poultry farmer, they have to think that can they use vaccine as a method to control avian influenza virus? Yes, they can. The choice of the vaccine is there, and they can be used because what was happening in the past, that was different. The reason being there is a hesitancy in the vaccine, what we know from the past. There is a generation of the mutation. Those mutants are already being happening. You use the vaccine in poultry or you don't use the vaccine, that thing is already occurring. We like it or not. Though it can be in wild birds, it can be wild mammals, all those things are going to happen. Then international trade barrier, the example when we see that vaccination was done in duck in France, those trade barrier was not a bigger issue. So now there is an understanding at the world level that vaccine is being used for avian influenza. It can be. But there are logistic changes because we need huge number of vaccine. And I personally believe in Indian industry, and because they have the capacity to manufacture vaccines in any amount. They have shown for COVID, they have shown for human vaccination, where children vaccination, 60% are being manufactured in India. They can do also for the poultry. That won't be an issue, at least in my mind. If the need is there, Indian industry can step up and deliver. Then, very important thing whenever we do vaccination, the perception for biosecurity should not change. The vaccination is not going to take over biosecurity. Biosecurity measures we have to keep at the same level. If we don't do that, then vaccine failure would occur. Then vaccine efficacy, it will be important because there are so many choices of the vaccine currently, and future vaccines are going to be better. And I'm hopeful that for H5N1 or any highly pathogenic influenza viruses, good vaccines are going to be there. Current vaccines are pretty good, but there are other vaccines coming up which will be even better. Advantage, if we use the vaccine, and has shown in country where they have used vaccine, reduction in the infection rate, then transmission rate will get reduced, and the risk of transmission and then risk of spillover to wild animal. So the changes are going to occur much less if we use those vaccines. Otherwise, the virus is uncontrolled and it is going everywhere. Even when you look at, because what I'm showing a little bit of the glimpse. I did not included the vaccine manufacturer from India because there are so many of them. They are doing very good work. So about vaccine, I have just used some vaccine manufacturer, and that is no intention for me to exclude anyone, because everyone I cannot include in my presentation. So that was not by design. That was just to make my point that Indian industry is very capable. There are so many, you can say, vaccine industry in India are making, you can say, highly pathogenic vaccine. So one vaccine, my point is that USDA is willing to use vaccine in the birds. My point is not. Who is making that vaccine? That is not my point. My point is USDA is willing to use the vaccine, which they were thinking they will never use vaccine in poultry against any influenza viruses. The reason, they are not able to control the virus for last 3 years. They have tried the regular method and they thought the using of vaccine is going to be effective. Currently, the USDA has provided almost $100 million for developing vaccine for poultry. So similar things, the Indian industry with the government help can develop better vaccine, because later on poultry vaccine against H5N1, we have to use it, because the regular methods are not going to be sufficient. Because when things change, we have to change. It's not that in the past we were doing fine without doing those kind of things. So if we think we can control by stamping out, then I will say that we will be mistaken. We have to think very seriously use of the vaccine for controlling of highly pathogenic influenza virus. These are the countries which are using: China, France, Mexico, Egypt, Vietnam, Indonesia, Bangladesh. And I'm not using, you can say, data from every country, but these are just the glimpse of some of the vaccine manufacturer in the world. And the only thing I'm trying to say, they are inactivated vaccine which are being used. Then there are viral vectored vaccines which are being used, then subunit vaccine, and also the vaccine which are recombinant vaccine. So these lists are going to change. Which vaccines are going to work better? That is going to change. There are reassortant vaccine which is being done. They are better than inactivated vaccines which are in that list. So in Mexico, what they did, that they were having a lot of infections occurring, and consider the number of about 10 million birds they have to euthanize, and then they started using some of these vaccines which I've listed. These are, you can say, recombinant vaccine, and then they use 2 different type of vaccine, and then they find it out what as outcome, that there was reductions in the infection rate, and overall the effect was 80%. These vaccines were effective. And anytime whenever they are using multiple different vaccines, and if they are not using those vaccines right way, and where they has to be used, and then more problem what they were having, people were compromising on biosecurity. And that can add lot of problem if people will not follow the same biosafety rules. So those needed to be followed nicely. In case of France, the story is much better. They use in the duck, and in 2023, over 1.8 billion euro were lost because they need to compensate the duck farmer. and then they decided to use the vaccine. And once they started to use the vaccine, they did not get that many infection in the country. So overall story in the France in the use of vaccine in the duck, and the amount of the vaccine, they use over 80 million doses. If you look at the amount of the money they spend and amount of money they saved, it's a huge saving, and it is a good success story overall if we consider that way. So it can be done, but all the future vaccines are going to be better. In my opinion, that they are going to be better, which we can use. Even in the Egypt, they have used. Many years ago, we just did a study in the Egypt. It was about, I think, about 15 years ago, where they used the vaccine and H5N1 infections were occurring. In the story about vaccination in the Egypt, the reason I included that, and which is not a good thing to do in any country, they use 20 different vaccines. So when you use that many vaccines, because you are not sure that which vaccines are going to be good, you can use 4 or 5 different vaccines. 20 different vaccines are too many. So when you use those kind of vaccine, you are going to end up with some problem. So that's why, compared to other country, the efficacy in vaccination in Egypt was lower. I've been to Egypt farm, you can say few times. I happened to be there because their biosecurity and other measures are much lower than what we see in India. So India is far, far better in poultry industry what the Egyptian model is. So I'm including those ones just to give you a glimpse that if the vaccine is not being used nice way, it may not work out in certain country. There's another success story which is in some captive birds, because these condor, they are very less in number in California, and many of them were dead, at least about 18% of them. Then they used a vaccine which was a reassortant vaccine and inactivated, and then it was highly effective in there. They got very good immune response, and those condor were protected. So number was less, but even then it's a good success story. So whenever we are using the vaccine, especially for H5N1 or any highly pathogenic avian influenza viruses poultry, what we have to use, that vaccine is needed to be updated. If it is needed to be updated, we update those vaccine. What is our target? If it is H5, our target, then we make that vaccine. If our H7 is our target, or H5H7 our target, we can have a vaccine which will work against both of those two different type of hemagglutinin carrying viruses. Then biosecurity, we have to keep it. There is no vaccine is going to work well without biosecurity. Then hygiene and disinfection is going to be useful, and surveillance is always better. Not only in surveillance in poultry, we also have to do the surveillance in wild birds. Whatever we can do, there are government agencies which can do, the poultry industry can also participate in there, so that we know what is around, and we know what are the season where those wild birds are carrying the virus, and then we can do a very good job. There are a lot of challenges, and also I would say opportunity for our administrator and the decision maker, poultry farmer, poultry industry, that are we happy with what we are currently doing with control of avian influenza in India? If we are happy, we don't need to change. If we are not happy, then what are the opportunities? And one opportunity is always going to be the vaccination. Then antigenic drift, people will consider. If we use vaccine, we don't use vaccine, that is already occurring. We cannot control it. So many countries are using it. Consider China is using those vaccines for so many years. That reassortant virus will come from China. We cannot control those migratory birds. They don't need H-1B visa, which were being controlled in the US currently. Then how we are going to take care of our farmer who are using smuggled vaccine in India? They are going to use it. It is efficacious, it is not efficacious, that is going to cause problem. So why not we release our own vaccine, which is known what is happening. Then did we learn anything from the US experience? They sacrificed that many poultry, over 180 million. They were not able to control. They have all different kind of resources. I think they have better resources than majority of the countries. But they are not able to succeed, and now they are deciding to improve the poultry vaccine so that they can start using it. So when they have changed that, Indian industry, Indian administrator, they also have to make those decisions that is it time to change and how we'll make that change and how the industry will come up with a better vaccine. And always I will say that any country can be a follower or it can lead the world. And currently what is happening in India, whatever I have seen, that India is not a follower anymore. They are leading many industries, and I think I have trust in the poultry industry in India. They can lead this effort if there is a you can say, public and industry partnership. They will able to lead and deliver nicely for the poultry industry in India. Just a little bit of the glimpse that my lab, what is doing for the avian influenza vaccines. We are using adenoviral vector-based vaccine and using an internal protein NP, and there are certain changes what we are occurring, that we are attaching some autophagy-inducing peptide which will provide better T-cell response, and there are other kind of changes we are making in the antigen design so that the delivery of the vaccine is better. And we have finding that our vaccine strategy, it is also providing trained immunity, that it can provide non-specific protection against influenza. Even if we don't include any influenza antigen, it can still provide protection, and that is through trained immunity. And this is another mechanism that which kind of cells are involved, and I'm not going to go into the details. So we did the study in mouse as well as in ferret, and both of us were supporting that our vaccine will work. I'm not showing any other data, just the protection data. In the below, if you consider, we use H5 virus, and our vaccine is, we are not able to detect the virus in the lung. Then we also use H7 and 9 virus, that is also avian influenza virus, which is also goes in human. We were not able to detect the virus with the same vaccine. There is no different vaccine. We also use H9 virus, was full protection. We also use the seasonal influenza virus, H1 virus and H3 virus, and there was significant decrease in the level. And if we consider any vaccine which are being used in the US and other part of the world, they don't get better response than that in H1 and H3 virus, what our vaccine is being doing. So if we use a vaccine for the mouse, we have the vaccine. But hopefully this vaccine is very well working in ferret, which is a very good model, very close to human. So we will be doing other study, which we have just did a study in cattle. We are analyzing those data, is that vaccine will work in cattle. We are also doing the same vaccine strategy in poultry, and we will analyze those data to see will this vaccine will work in the poultry or not. and then how we'll improve the vaccine which will work for the poultry industry better. So this is one way. There are multiple other labs which are doing those vaccine, and I think the poultry industry is well established at how these vaccines are going to work overall. So these are the people in my lab who actually did the work, and I do collaborate with the CDC, which is in Atlanta, and that collaboration is going on last 25 years, and I'm getting money for my work from NIH. And I think at this time the questions are not allowed. Then I will be waiting for the question session for any question you might have. And thank you again, and thank you for the opportunity and a wonderful audience. Thank you.